I'm Chris Bussing. Welcome to my channel. It's committed to helping more people create lives of freedom and impact through success in tech sales and the pursuit of self-development. Oh boy, do I have a great guest for you today. David Priemer. I got it right?
You got it, man. Yeah.
David Priemer, right?
I liked your intro, the freedom and impact. I'm like, I'd like that too. So
yeah. And the thing is, I mean, isn't that what this is all about? At least in my mind is, sales is such a great tool to create a great life. I mean, I think maybe we could start there, but I wanted to so we'll get to that in a second, but I just wanted to do you some justice in terms of your pedigree and your background. But David Priemer started out as a research scientist, and then this guy stumbled upon the world of sales and spent 20 years with 4 startups and then 5 great years at Salesforce. And then he went on to become a chief sales scientist and invented a whole unique way of taking a modern approach to sales called cerebral selling. And your work, David, from what I've seen, has been featured in Forbes and Inc. magazine and Harvard Business. Adjunct professor at Queen's University. Is that still the case?
Yeah.
Incredible. And you're the author of Sell the Way You Buy, right?
Yeah, Sell the Way You Buy. And I have a new book that came out in the spring called The Sales Leader They Need. But yeah.
And just to finish off this this intro, Dan Pink is coming on next Monday, and he says that you can't not buy, Sell the Way You Buy. I saw that endorsement. I'm like, are you kidding me? And then I look at my personal life, and Adam Morrissey, my buddy, who's a chief growth officer, says David Priemer is the first thought leader that I followed. And he said, you got to have this guy on. So you've been impacting people in my personal sphere, including myself. So thank you for your contribution. And guys, I just wanted you to have a taste for this man's impact in the sales world. And we're going to have a great conversation around modern selling. So last thing I'll say is if you get value out of this conversation, which I know I will, then make sure to hit the like button because the YouTube algorithm loves that and will show this video to more people who could benefit from the message, and share the video with more people that could benefit as well. So David, maybe we could start where we started to hop to. What are your thoughts on sales as a path? Doesn't it open up a lot of opportunity?
100%. Well, it's funny because everyone gets into sales by accident because we don't usually teach this in school. It's not something your guidance counselor tells you can do. So we all just kind of have an origin story that, I ended up getting into this. And like you said, I was a research scientist, got into it by accident. We can talk about that. But it's funny now. So I have 3 kids, and my eldest is in her second year of college. She's in engineering, and she's trying to, and my middle one is in high school. So they're all figuring out, what am I going to do when I grow up? And, on one hand, they're realizing that, they want a career of fulfillment and they want to do what they love, but they also need to make money and, and have a certain livelihood. And, so it's funny. Someone asked me, they said, well, then what would happen one time if one of your kids came to you and said, Dad, I want to go into sales. And at first my reaction is, oh dear God, no. Why would you want to, do that? And, but the reality is sales is an amazing profession. As a former research scientist, I love to think, I love to learn. And sales is just putty that you can play with. It's this environment that's always changing. Every year is different. And there's so much to unpack and explore because, and this is, I'm getting all sciencey, is that there's so many variables. If you think about equations that govern the physical properties in our environment. People always like to rag on weather forecasters because, they're always wrong, right? Well, the reason they're always wrong is because there's so many variables that govern the movement of synoptic forces in our environment, which is why when you run a weather forecasting model, it's accurate for the next 24 hours. But then if you ran it for a week or 3 weeks or a month, all of the little margins of error would end up propagating and give you a forecast that's in no way in reality what's going to happen.
Wow.
The same thing happens in sales, right? It's maybe I have a great product and maybe I'm good at selling, but maybe you just had an argument with your spouse or your roommate in the morning. Now you're going toe to toe with me on a call. I can't control those variables. So I find it fascinating, all the different variables that flow into this profession. And so, yeah, I love it and would highly recommend it for anyone who wants it to be, something that provides them with all the things you said, freedom and impact. And I would highly support my kids doing it too.
There are so many variables outside of our control. An argument with a spouse and you don't know that the person you're about to cold call is in the worst mood in the world. And like typically they don't want to talk to you, a stranger anyways, but you throw that in the mix and it's kind of tough. But don't you think a part of success in sales and entrepreneurship is almost like surrendering the need to control things that are out of our control and controlling the controllables? I don't mean to project my own thinking onto you, but I'd love your thoughts on that topic.
100%. Well, it's funny, the analogy I often give is that when we teach people how to do sales, we sometimes treat it like a first aid course. It's like, do these things, write an email with these points, like why you, why now, why this. When you go into discovery, ask these 5 questions.
Yeah, good point.
But first aid courses are not resilient. First aid courses are not medical school. If someone comes into the ER with all sorts of, issues, a first aid course isn't going to do it. And so I actually think it's wrong that we teach people how to do sales as a first aid course. To your point, because there's so many variables, when I step into the arena doing a discovery call, to the extent that I can treat that like as I go in with the things I want to know and how I want the call to go, but like I have to be resilient and I have to take it in whatever direction it goes in, right? And if we train people to do first aid, then we're setting them up to fail. It's like when I was a kid and I did karate. Okay.
Oh, cool.
I remember when I was a little kid. Then I actually did karate when I was a teenager up until my 20s, and I got a black belt, the whole thing. But before then, when I was a little kid, like 7, 8 years old, taking karate, and I remember the sensei was like, "Okay, you're gonna line up, Chris and David. You're gonna line up, facing each other. And Chris, you're gonna throw this punch, and David's gonna do a block that like this, and just practice that." And I remember saying to the instructor, I said, "Can I just ask this question? I didn't realize until this point in time how prophetic the question was I said, how do you know when you're in a fight, how do you know what the other person's going to do?" And I was asking it as though fights are choreographed, like people telegraph what they're going to do and I'm going to punch it but the reality is sales is the same way. I don't know what the hell you're going to do. So if I come in with an inflexible list of things and tactics that I want to execute on you, I'm setting myself up for failure. So I love the variables and the resilience. And it's funny that we have to train people to be resilient in like the medical school of sales, because anything can happen on these calls.
So I just, signed up for David Priemer's medical school of sales. I actually got a good scholarship. Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure.
What would I be learning about resilience, like through the lens of what we're talking about, to be able to dance in the chaos? And just love your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So like, let's take an example of like discovery, right?
Yeah.
So I remember I thought it was so clever. When I was back at Salesforce, I was interviewing reps for hiring.
And by the way, VP of commercial sales, like that is a solid role over there, man. So yeah, that's no joke.
Well, no, it's funny. I used to, I came into Salesforce because they acquired my startup.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I came in. And then I was there for 5 years and I ended up running small business sales for the Eastern US. So I had a team of 70 sales reps across 3 different cities.
Wow.
And it was great because each city kind of came with their own persona, like selling into, Florida is different than selling into Massachusetts.
My hometown.
Florida. There you go.
And then I cut my teeth in sales in Boston. So how did you know?
Very different environments, right?
Seriously, so different.
So different, right? Even when I think about the reps, like my New York City sales reps were very different than my Atlanta, based sales reps, for example. And so when I was hiring, one of the questions I would ask my, the candidates, I would say, Chris, let me ask you, when you go into a discovery call with a customer, what are some of the favorite questions you love to ask? I thought it was all clever, like, all right, what clever questions Chris going to come up with?
Yeah.
And one of the most memorable stories, which I wrote into Sell the Way You Buy, was a rep who actually went on to become one of our top reps and was there for many years. He actually just left. He said, David, I've realized over the years that, I come into discovery calls with a list of questions, but just because I have these questions doesn't mean anyone's going to answer them. Right. And it was so insightful.
Wow.
Right? Because you talk about like the medical school of sales, like when I ask reps, like, when you come out of a discovery call, what do you want to know? Or when you go in, what do you want to know? And they're like, oh, I want, like the band, the budget, the needs, the timing, who's going to sign this thing, whatever. Like, okay, if I said you can only get like one of those things, because you're not going to have time to get all that stuff,
true,
right?
Very true. Yeah.
What's the number one thing that you would want to come up with? This is an exercise I actually talk about in the book, where I say, like, think about all the things you want to get out and what's the order you want to get them in. And it's a good example of how sometimes we train people to go in saying, okay, I want to extract these 10 pieces of information, but we actually don't think what's the most important thing. And how, by the way, am I going to get people to open up about the things that they don't want to tell me? Right? I one of the examples you talk about, being a complete human in a sales
Yeah.
environment. So I'm a cancer survivor, 2-time cancer survivor. And I talk about this it's okay. Thank you. I talk about this
Amazing.
in both my books. And I said, when I showed up to work, going through my cancer journey, like, of course I brought that with me. Like, I show up to work, I had things on my mind. I say that as an example of, like, you had an argument with your spouse that morning, like, the way I lead, the way I execute, like, I have these things on my mind, and everyone that you work with and know has secrets that they don't want to share, that they bring
Yeah.
to them at work. And, I talk about this and I say, I didn't tell people I had cancer because I didn't want people to think of me differently. I didn't want people to
Wow.
always be asking, hey, David, like, how you feeling? How you doing? And I know that you mean well. I get it. And again, I don't hold the moratorium on the cancer. Lots of people have cancer. And from what I gather, they kind of share the similar sentiment where people are well-meaning and they want to know how you're doing, but you get tired after a while of, like, hearing, hey, how you doing? And so I just didn't want it to become part of my identity. So I didn't tell anyone. I told my family, my friend, I got certain people knew, um, and certain people at work knew, but in general, my teams didn't know. But then I realized there were some people that I opened up to very quickly about it. This was a secret, didn't tell anyone, but there were some people I did tell. So I'm talking to my friend Chris Bussing, and Chris is like, hey, David, I'm going through this tough time now. One of my friends' family is suffering from cancer, and it's really tough. And in that situation, I would be like, oh, Chris, I know exactly what you're going through. And I would open up to you. And so I tell you that story to say that in the world of sales and discovery, I learned a lot from going through that experience, and that we often come to our sales conversations thinking that we're going to get full disclosure from our customers. But the reality is they have secrets that they don't want to tell us about their businesses, their pains, their challenges, partially because it's none of our business, partially because we're in sales. So therefore we're the enemy, and they're always concerned about what they've, how much they disclose to us. But in sales, it's kind of our job to get them to open up. So the question is, how do we establish that rapport and trust so that they feel comfortable telling us the things that not only I say are secret or confidential or embarrassing or sensitive, but that can actually help us help them. Right. So anyways, I'm a big fan of connecting the dots between sales and life,
Mm.
and leadership, because that's what it is. And it's funny that in sales, we actually have to use tactics to help people have human feeling conversations when in fact we're all human.
Yeah, you're the perfect guest for this channel. Just the sales development meets self-development, right? And just uh, this really is we talk about sales, but it's a Trojan horse to living a life of, as I mentioned before, freedom, impact, connection. And this has already been worth the price of admission. And we're only 13:30 in. My intro was too long, man. I gave you a long intro because you deserve
No,
it.
it's great.
But let's hit on what you alluded to in terms of, you come in with a list of questions, and first off, you're like, you got to earn the trust and create the rapport for someone even to open up to answer the questions. And second of all, you're probably not going to get all your questions answered. I just had a discovery call with a VP of engineering yesterday. It was incredible, but there were some questions I didn't get to that are really important. You can't get to all of them. So I don't know if you already answered this, but what is that most important question? I thought you alluded to one being most important.
There is, and it's funny. I've moderated my viewpoint on this over the years. At first, I was like, "Well, Chris, it's whatever is important to you. You come up with whatever your prioritized list is."
Yeah.
However, I think the way I organized the list, even back when I wrote "Sell the Way You Buy," which was 4 years ago, actually
Link
came
in
out
the
4 years
description
ago.
of this video, guys.
Yeah.
Check it out.
So
Anyways,
check it out.
seriously.
But I'll tell you, this has been, I work with, gratefully lots of, I work with obviously lots of tech companies, Salesforce, DocuSign, Workday,
Top companies. I see it on the LinkedIn banner, man. So many good names.
and it's funny because they struggle with this, and I'll relate it to, like, the number one thing that you should come out of the call knowing is, what's the problem we're going to solve for them.
Yeah.
Because if I don't know the problem that we can solve for you, it doesn't matter how much it costs. It doesn't matter who's going to sign it. It doesn't matter what the approval process is. It doesn't matter. If you don't have a problem I can help you solve, none of that matters. And the funny thing is, when I ask, reps, I'm like, so what's the problem you solve for your customers? Oftentimes, especially being in technology, I get very technology answers. Oh, well, we help create a 360-degree view for our customers. We help their systems talk to each other.
Yeah.
I'm like, no one wakes up in the middle of the night saying, thank goodness I got a 360-degree, my systems
I can
talk to
see
each other.
every angle.
Yeah. Like, that's not a problem. Like when I go to Costco and watermelons cost like $15, like that's a problem. Like talk to customers about a real problem that they have, that exists irrespective of your solution. Don't be like pitching your solution in your problems. And a lot of times when you think about discovery, my clients tell me this, is like our reps go out and they do discovery almost as though they're just doing requirements gathering to give their customers a demo. Focus, what is the problem that exists with or without your organization, really without your organization,
Yep.
that this customer is looking to solve. And I'll tell you, I ask this question of so many of my clients, and a lot of them cannot tell me. They can't tell me.
What does a nice, well-defined problem look like? Give us one. Try and give us an example. Maybe it's the 360 view that resonates, because I'm at a cloud consultancy. We work with Google Cloud, AWS, and Azure, and we might help build customer data platforms, for example. Like, I don't know if there's an example on the flip side of, rather than, oh, you get this nice 360 view, what a actually clearly defined problem might look like in that scenario.
Yeah, well, actually, I try to lead my clients towards that, that discovery. I'm like, okay, so and usually, sometimes I refer to this as like the so what culture, which is like, great, hey, our customers need a 360-degree view. I'm like, who gives a shit? Like, so what? Like, what do they need the 360-degree view for?
Yeah.
And then they start thinking, okay, well, because then, if for example, their customers are trying to connect with them through different avenues, or we have different people from our organization reaching out to them, then we have a complete view. I'm like, okay, so what? Who gives a shit about the complete view? Like, just keep going. Like, so what? It's like, well, if we seem uncoordinated and we don't know who the customer is when we reach out to them and reach out with the right context, then we're going to create a bad experience for them. And they're not going to like that. I'm like, okay. And then, like, well, and then they won't buy our products. They won't donate money. They won't do. Okay, great. So now we have a problem, right? Your customers aren't buying your products or services. They aren't giving you money. And why? Because you're unknowingly creating a shitty customer experience for them. And in this day and age, where people have very high expectations of the experience they have with you, like I order stuff off Amazon and it comes to my door like the next day in a box. That's crazy, right? And then Netflix curates content for me. Like, that's the experience that I expect when I start interacting with your organization. If I don't have that experience, I'm just going to go somewhere else, because in my mind, even though your product might be unique and differentiated, I know you're a beautiful snowflake and you're different than everyone else. The reality is, in the minds of our customers who spend 1% giving a crap about what it is that you do, they're very focused on the experience, and they still see us at the outset as kind of all the same. So back to like what's the problem you solve, 360-degree view. In a day and age where customers are making decisions about purchases they want to make based on the experience they have with the brand, you are unknowingly going out there and creating a bad experience for your customers because you don't have insight into how they've been interacting with you. We can help solve that problem, right? Like, so I'm tethering my narrative to like, we can help you win more business, drive that customer loyalty, and solve this, this challenging experience you're creating for your customers. And now, hopefully, you're leaning in and you're saying, "This is David. This is yes, I would like that." And and how do I do it? It doesn't matter how I do it. Does that sound interesting? Are you interested in continuing the conversation with me? Like, that's the kind of narrative that we all need to be driving, which is like, what's the problem that we're solving for our customers? How we solve it, less important. initially, first you got to get the customers interested and get them to lean in.
You figure out the how afterwards. You work with your team and you put the solution together, but you don't have if you don't have a 360 view of customers, you're missing out on incremental revenue opportunities. You are losing revenue and in fact also losing market share to the competitors that those customers go to. So appreciate you showing us a very concrete example of defining a problem and even walking us through the steps to ask questions of ourselves to get deeper and deeper to the true impact. So I want to talk about cerebral selling and some of its tenets. I want to talk about sell the way you buy, and maybe some fun other questions will come up. But I just want to bring it back real quick and talk about as a research scientist. I could ask you a lot of questions around that. It's such a unique background, but like, what were some of the lessons you learned from that experience that actually served you in sales that might have maybe it contributed to your unique approach?
100%. Well, I actually have a blog post. If you ever go onto my blog on cerebralselling.com, and it was like, top lessons learned about sales from being a research scientist. I talk about these 6 sales skills learned from being a research scientist. Because there are many. And, simple things like, for example, being able to explain complex things simply.
That's so important.
100%. Like I would be a research scientist. I would go to these talks that like other scientists were giving about their research, and they assumed that when I came in, like I had a certain baseline knowledge of what the heck it is they did, which no one does, right? So they start talking at the wrong level, and they just lose you immediately, right? So like, how do you do that? Also, because when I started my career, and shout out, I was an SC leader for the first 8 years of my
Oh,
sales
no
career.
way.
So I would do, because I was a research scientist, and I would do as a research scientist, I was building computer models. So like mathematical computer models. And so when I entered the startup space in late 1999, 2000, because that's what you did, I would do like, demos, presentations, custom coding. Like we would code up, in startup land, like we just do this all ourselves. So being able to go into a business and say, look, I've spent hours, kind of custom coding this and kind of trying to tell a story, just to explain it really simply, was a really good skill to have learned. Taking good notes was another huge one. Like even today, it's a tactic that still serves me. Taking notes, listening intently. I say like having conviction. In science, we make discoveries and learn things, and our job is to convince other people that what we've discovered makes sense, and and is right, and it advances things. And so if you don't have conviction in what you're talking about, like people can tell, being detail oriented, being curious, favoring evidence, over hunches was another one. So these are all things that, being a research scientist really helped me cultivate from a sales skills perspective.
So insightful. And to the audience, dig up that article on what was it titled? Like 6 lessons learned from being a research scientist
It's
or
called
something like
6
that.
critical sales skills I learned from being a research scientist. Yeah. If you just
Perfect.
go to cerebralselling.com/blog, it'll be on that first page.
Well, guys, check out the blog. And now let's talk about cerebral selling. And it seems like there's certain underpinning tenets that contribute to this unique approach. And I took some notes on it, but I thought I saw like it's scientific, empathetic, and execution based. And again, make sure to correct me if I'm not saying it exactly right, but overall were those like 3 key pillars of cerebral selling.
Yeah, well, it's based on this principle. It's funny you mentioned you're going to have Dan Pink on, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I love, one of the reasons why I wanted to have Dan Pink involved in Sell the Way You Buy was because I've been a fan of his content for many years. We actually, at my third startup, did a webinar together back in 2010 or so. But in To Sell is Human, which is my favorite Dan Pink book.
Yeah.
I don't want to butcher the quote, but it ends he's like, in a world where, information parity, like basically customers have lots of information.
Yeah.
Information parity is replaced information asymmetry. When there's a million different solutions, he's like, being able to move people, like that's what he calls it, like move people, like move
Yes.
people emotionally.
Yes.
Requires as much sophistication as reading an MRI report or designing a house. He says like sales is a thinking person's profession. And it didn't always used to be, but the way I kind of thought about cerebral selling was how I kind of described the very first chapter in Sell the Way You Buy. So I'm, not to age myself, but I'm 40, as recording this, I'm 49 years old.
Really?
So yeah, I'm 49.
Man, you're looking good. And I was
Thank
gonna say, you kind of look like Paul Rudd meets Jimmy Fallon. Have you heard that? Paul Rudd meets Jimmy Fallon?
Yes. Well,
That's a
there's a funny story.
compliment, man.
I was in Chicago one time back when I worked for Salesforce, having lunch in a restaurant, and there was a couple at the other table, and they're kind of, then they kind of
They're
look
like,
at
"Oh
you and
my
they kind of laugh
gosh."
and they go away. And then I walked by them on the way out, and I'm like, "Hey, well, what's up?" And they're like, "We thought you were Paul Rudd. We know that you're not now, but like
Yeah.
we thought just for a second there." So yeah, so I was born in 1975 for all of
Yep.
you folks out there, and so in 1984, a movie came out called The Karate Kid, and
Yeah.
it's funny that Karate Kid has now become popular again with the Netflix series and so on. But I call the first chapter of my book, or the first section of the first chapter, I call it the Cobra Kai paradox. Which, if you know your Karate Kid, the Cobra Kai is this this karate school for bullies. Let's just call it like that, right? But at the end of the Karate Kid, the first initial movie with where Daniel LaRusso, he does his famous crane kick, right? At the end of the movie, Johnny Lawrence, who's kind of like the bad guy bully kid that he fights in the tournament, uh, after he loses the tournament, he grabs the championship trophy and he brings it up to Daniel LaRusso. He fights through the crowd and he gives it to him and he says, "You're all right, LaRusso." Right. And the way I kind of think about that is like, here's a kid, and you kind of see this in the new series, right? It's like he chose to learn karate from a master, certain sensei. And that sensei was a bully, and he cultivated a whole cohort of bullies because that's who those kids chose to learn from. Daniel LaRusso learns from Mr. Miyagi, and he grows up and turns out to be different. And in
Mm.
sales, who we choose to be our sensei has a big impact over who we end up being. There's a lot of bad salespeople out there, but I believe a lot of those bad salespeople are not bad people. They're
Mm.
good people. They're just using tactics that are rooted in nothing other than this is what we've always done. And so my approach was to say, let's take a step back here for a second. Sales is still rooted in, there's an art and science to it, but it's still rooted in the psychology of human behavior. How do human beings make purchasing decisions? Like, which messages do they respond to and which, do they not? Like there's a cause and effect for how we say things and how we do things and how we position things. And I said, if we can just take a step back and understand those pathways and mechanisms, then it doesn't matter what we learned or who taught us. We can just operate all along those sales pathways and decision-making pathways and be successful. Because I realized when I was at Salesforce that a lot of the tactics, if I can call them Cobra Kai tactics, that my team was executing, because you think about Salesforce, a big sales machine,
Yes.
very lots of history. They're going out there and they're executing these tactics that, while not unethical and not categorically ineffective, they were just not working on me when other sales reps at other companies were trying to sell me stuff when I was at Salesforce. And I was like, is this what my team's doing? Like, this is no good. So it kind of forced me, and I had always been good at sales, but I never really knew what exactly I was doing from a pattern matching perspective that made me successful. So I said, you know what? I got to go back to my roots here, and I got to almost codify the way we describe what we do: message, discovery, objection handle, negotiation. Like, what are those pathways? Because if we understand the pathways, then we can never really go wrong, because we're not learning from, tactics that, someone just told us to do because that's what they did 20 years ago. So, and I took the same approach as well with, sales leadership. Let's just take a step back. Like, how should we be executing this? And of course, I'm not doing this from an academic perspective. I've been in the trenches for 20 years, 25 years now. So like
That's what I love is you get the real world chops,
yeah.
So
So it's harmonizing the science and the art with the experience in the field to come up with, a tactical selling system that's aligned with the way people like actually buy.
and so that's what you mean by science, right? Is like you've kind of figure out the science that what predictably drives results, but it's not like tactics, like do this specific manipulative thing, but is it more so habits? And again, keep me honest here,
Yeah.
but it seems like you're really big on habits that drive results.
Yeah, it's a combination. So there are tactics, but
Okay.
then it's a combination of the tactics and the execution, right? When
Okay.
I'm asking a question, I say to people, it doesn't matter what the question is. If I ask it with the right tone and approach, and I slow down and I sound curious, then it makes you want to answer it more than if I was just reading it as the next question off my list, right?
Mm.
But at the same time, like I talk about tactics, let's say, for example, I had a solution that could save you time. I have a solution. It's a tech solution, and one of the things it does is it automates a bunch of stuff at your company, right?
Frees up 10 hours a week.
Frees up 10 hours a week, right? So 100. So I could describe that. Let's say I had a solution that could free up, 10 hours a week for you.
For an engineer who costs a lot of money.
Costs a lot of money. But what if I said, I have a solution that can free up 15% of your time every week? Those two statements, 15% of your time in 10 hours, for example, they might be mathematically equivalent, but they are not processed in the same way in the mind of your buyer, because you can picture what 10 hours of your time would be, you'd be doing. Like, what if I said I could give you back 1 day a week? What would you do, Chris, with 1 day a week? 15% of your time is like an abstract I don't know what the hell 15% of my time is.
Mm.
And we fall into these traps a lot. Sometimes the reverse. I was one of my clients. I love all my clients. They had this statistic. For example, they were a cybersecurity firm, and they said, data breaches cost small businesses in the U.S. $80 billion a year in ransomware. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? 80 billion. You might as well set a bajillion dollars. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
It sounds like a big number, but like, I don't know what that means for me.
Yes.
But if you said data breaches cost small businesses like you on average like $500,000 a year in ransomware, now it's personal.
There we go.
Mathematically equivalent, processed completely differently. So I'm just giving you an example.
That was such a good example, David. Like we have a cost saving software that's a Trojan horse in accounts at my company. And sometimes I'll say, we save 8 to 20%. Well, it just hit me. That doesn't mean anything for a company that, how much are they spending? How much total dollars would 8 to 20% translate to? Like, at least make an effort to make it more like actually quantify relative to their business. So that was such a good nugget right there.
I'll give you an example. When I was going through my cancer treatment, so my doctor said, here's a treatment plan, we would recommend. It was like some radioactive thing. And so he says, just so you know, I have to tell you this. If you go through this treatment, your chances of developing a secondary cancer will double. So it's a 100% increase in your chances of developing a secondary cancer. I'm like, well, that doesn't sound good at all. And he said, well, to put into perspective, your chances of developing a secondary cancer were 1 in 100,000 before. So now they're 2 in 100,000.
Wow.
That doesn't sound as bad when you say it like that, So anyways, see like how we say things is so important.
Yeah, that's our job, man. We got to package things the right way. And I love, David, you've given us so many good examples in this conversation. You've told some great stories. And isn't storytelling important in sales? That's a leading question because there's some LinkedIn posts that I took notes on, and I think you said it's like, how do you sell when you don't feel like you hate selling? And like one of them, you're like, lead with belief and tell stories and then create helpful content. So I've been following your stuff, but let's maybe talk about the stories piece. Like, how important is storytelling?
So important. First of all, like human, and why? Because human beings are conditioned to listen to stories when told well, because that's how we passed knowledge from generation to generation for hundreds of years, so stories are really important. But the problem with stories is that they're not all told the same way. Sometimes you're listening to a story, someone's telling you something, you're like, oh my gosh, I want to kill myself. Like, I want to be anywhere but here. This is a horrible, storytelling experience. And why? Because sometimes people tell stories that don't have the right kind of narrative and the right arc, or they take too long. So I say, like, stories are very powerful if they're told in the right way. I'll tell you like another kind of secret reason why they're really powerful is because from a messaging perspective, I talk about this in my messaging content. One of the goals of your message when someone says, so Chris, what do you do at your company? Like, what do you say? One of the goals is for that thing that you say to be memorable, because the person that you're speaking to is often not the final and only decision maker. So they need to go back into their own organization and say, oh, I heard you spoke to Chris the other day from such and such. Like, what do they do? And if all I kind of remember is like some fraction of a product of what you did, it's not going to be compelling internally. But if I can tell you a story about a problem that this solves, that's a lot easier for you to communicate. So stories have so many benefits when told the right way. They're engaging, they're memorable, and they also help customers decide whether or not they align with the story or maybe they don't. In which
Yeah.
case they're not a good fit.
I mean, shoot, they're the gateway to hearts and minds, and then we talk about like getting customers to open up. And I'll tell you, stories have even worked for me in a cold email that I was reaching out to this 800 million in revenue healthcare staffing company, and I'd reached out for 6 months. And so it was a long time, but I threw a story at them of helping a customer similar to them moving their ETL and data lake. This might sound like fluff to a lot of people to the cloud, and the systems were more stable. And I kind of quantified it, and the CIO did respond, and he delegated me to the head of data analytics. So I noticed even in emails, it's powerful. Now I have to ask you, because you were alluding to it, there's a right way to tell a story. So can you please enlighten us, at least at a high level, on what telling a story effectively looks like?
Yeah. So I'll give you something really simple. So in my training, one of the simplest things, and I actually have a blog post about this as well.
Okay.
I call it the infomercial formula. You ever watch like infomercial products? You got the magic bullet or the super sharp knives or whatever it is they sell on TV. Now I'll say there's also lots of different formulas that you can use to tell your story. So, there's some for like first call decks and all that kind of stuff. This is just like a simple narrative.
Cool.
And it kind of has, I say 4 steps, really 3, but I'll kind of break them down. So if you think about an infomercial, like think about an infomercial for like sharp knives, like, oh, like they're, they want to sell you these, space age knives.
I actually could use a knife. I'm like basically volunteered to bring some friends together for a steak dinner. And I bought the steak at like Whole Foods, and I realized I don't have a knife. So I am in the market.
You got to have sharp knives. I'll tell you. So,
yeah.
So here's the thing. So if you were to watch an infomercial for a sharp knife, how do they typically start?
Okay, I don't really know, but like it's a demo. You got to see the demonstration, right? They're gonna cut things, but like, how does it start?
So oftentimes they start with a problem. So like you have someone who's trying to cut like a tomato with like a dull knife, right? And they're wearing like a white jacket for whatever reason, and it just like splooshes all over the place. And sometimes it's like black and white grainy footage, and you're like, this is the most horrible thing I've ever seen, right? It's like, I feel so sorry. So they start out with like, here's the problem, right? You always start with the problem. Then they get into like, okay, well, here's what an ideal solution to the problem would be. That's step 2. Step 3 is painting a picture about why that solution that might seem ideal is actually not that great. And then step 4 is you lead in with your product. So for example, they might say something like, hey, look, you're trying to prepare delicious, healthy food for your family, but like, look what happens when you have a dull knife. It's dangerous. It can cut you. The food splooshes all over the place. And you end up wasting all this stuff. The solution, there are wonderful, Japanese hardened stainless steel knives out there that are super sharp and great. But oh my gosh, like those, you could pay like hundreds of dollars for one knife. Who wants to pay hundreds of dollars for one knife? At the Premier, cutlery company, we believe that every home chef should have access to, high quality but affordable, knives. And then I kind of lead in from there.
Yeah.
So again, problem. Even I'll tell you, like the one example I often show. There's a browser plugin called Honey. Have you heard of? What is? You heard of Honey?
Yeah. No. So tell us, because I mean, it's a great name though. That's why I was nodding my head. I'm like,
okay.
Sounds pretty sweet.
So Honey was a browser plug. It still is a browser plugin, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners have heard of this.
Yeah.
So if I were just it's like a little plugin that finds promo codes. So when you're checking out on Amazon or an e-commerce website, and you're like, oh, okay, like I don't know what it searches the website, it searches the internet for promo codes that could be valid for your purchase, and then saves you money. It doesn't cost you anything. You just install it and kind of off you go. I'm sure they get a cut, somewhere else. So what do they say is the narrative? They say like, so what's the problem? Shopping online, you're probably wasting money. And you're like, oh, why am I wasting money? And you're like, we all know about promo codes, right? Like to save money, you want to save money when you shop online, 100%, right? Because you feel like you could be wasting money.
Yeah.
What's the solution? Promo codes. We all know that promo codes exist and they can help you, get a discount or whatever. The problem is that like you don't know all the promo codes that exist, and like half the promo codes you try don't even work.
Mm.
And Honey, boom. Honey was acquired by PayPal. I always kind of get this wrong, for $3 or $4 billion within like 2 years of launching. Right?
Wow. Oh my gosh.
$1 billion.
In 2 to 4 years, I think you said, or something like that. Like, wow.
Super fast. And
What?
the way I kind of, I heard about Honey, I saw this YouTube ad. Because again, they don't sell it to you. It's free and they don't have a sales team. They just need you to install this plugin. So they tell a story. Shopping online, you're probably wasting money. We all know about promo codes, but who knows if the promo code is even right or if you have the best ones. Honey solves that problem. See, I just infomercial pitched you that Honey in like 5 seconds.
That was good. And I love your delivery, your passion, by the way, and your intonation. So that's part of it. Isn't that part of the execution piece?
It is. Well, I say,
I love that.
People can tell if you, but I say to people like, can you tell that I love what I do? And people are like, oh yeah, we can tell. I'm like, I'm not fishing for compliments, but like when you talk to me about your solution, do you think I can tell if you believe or you don't?
Yes.
100%. And by the way, like I always say, like the number one thing, back to science, what are people buying? First and foremost, all the time, they're not buying solutions. They're buying feelings. We all buy based on emotion. We make decisions based on emotion. It's funny. We're in the middle of a U.S. presidential election campaign season here. And as a Canadian, I have no horse in this race. So, go have at it. But, I will say that you see emotion playing a huge role, not substance, right? Emotion playing a huge role in how people are thinking about the candidates. And on one hand, there's a criticism like, well, it should really be about the issues. But like, that's not how people make decisions. People make decisions based on feelings. Whether you're buying expensive software and you're choosing to go with like the most expensive vendor in the market. Why? Like back to like, I think about Salesforce. This between us, Chris, does Salesforce have the best products and services like on the market? I don't know. Maybe. But I know that they are in the Gartner Magic Quadrant of a lot of different categories. And when people buy Salesforce, which is more expensive than other solutions out there, what are they buying? They're buying that Gartner Magic Quadrantness. They're buying that number one. And I get a good feeling, no matter how much I spend, on buying the industry standard solution, right? On the flip side, I might choose to invest in I was a startup guy. How could a startup ever compete? If I decided to create a new CRM, how could I ever compete with Salesforce? I would go in a direction where Salesforce cannot go. You're investing in me because you like this idea of working with a small, agile CRM company that's going to be responsive to your needs and iterates on the product super fast.
Yeah,
and does things Salesforce can't do because they're too big.
You can shape our roadmap. Yeah.
But that's only if that's what you want, right? So like in a way, feelings are exclusionary. Like you have to buy into the feelings, but at the end of the day, you are buying into those feelings. And so when we sell, we need to sell those feelings. And the feeling that you get from me is that David really loves what he does. And he seems to know, hopefully, a lot about it. And so it makes you hopefully want to learn more about what I do and how I do it. But I'm not faking it. I actually do love this. But the thing is for companies, like how do you take, this is a concept I talk about in this Harvard Business Review article I wrote 5 years ago, and I still talk about it today.
Yeah.
So here's what I saw at Salesforce. I have all these young, enthusiastic sales reps who are fearless. They'll call any customer, that you want. But oftentimes we ask these young reps to call on, if I can say, grown-ups, right? Like more experienced decision makers whose job they've never done. And when I would listen to these reps on the phone with those customers, I would hear in their voice the fear. I could tell that they were afraid. and it's coming through in their tone. It's almost like they're thinking, I don't know why this customer would listen to me, because who the hell am I? I'm just a kid, for
Yeah.
example. And like, but that's the tone. Like that's what you're conveying. So it doesn't really even matter what you're saying. So then the question becomes, how can we take? Now, here's the thing. The reality is, most of us in sales, Chris, you're probably calling on customers in your business whose job you've never done,
Much more experience,
much more experienced.
and
And
it's like I totally resonate with what you're saying anyways.
you may not even use the technology, like, oh, I'm selling to physicians, and I'm like, I don't know, I've never been a physician,
It's
I've
like
never
I'm
run a.
selling this fairy dust, like it's like fog carving with cloud computing. Like I'm selling compute and databases and cloud native security. And it's like, yeah, like data lakes. I've swam in a lake, but not a data lake. Anyway, so yeah, to your point, man. To your
So
point.
how do
Yeah.
you manifest? How do we take Chris and help him manifest conviction
Yes.
in like a product that, to be honest, in tech, here's the secret: like, no one really needs tech. Like, no one really needs it. It's not like, it's oh my gosh, like people will die. I mean, I know some tech is like that, but for the
There
most
is
part,
some tech like that.
there are some tech like that. But for the most part, people can get by
Yeah.
without it, doing whatever they're doing. And so, the question becomes like, okay, how do I turn this like nice to have? This is actually why, I have a bunch of tech clients. I mean, I work with a ton of tech clients, but I have some that aren't tech companies. And I find, and I've seen this a lot over the years as well, the tactics that you have to use in tech to sell and develop conviction and be good are a lot more advanced than what you use in banking or insurance, right? Because because no one needs it. Like, it's, so, I find that tech is like 10 years ahead of a lot of other industries in terms of how they sell, because they need to be good. But 100%, your customers can tell whether you believe or you don't believe.
And you need to build that belief. I just had this thought that hit me. Build your belief in yourself and in your product. Otherwise, there's no way they're going to buy. And so I was thinking, like, how do we build our belief, especially for a young person coming out of college? Like back when I started Oracle 10 years ago, I don't know, what was I, 22 years old, calling CIOs that were like,
Mhm.
their work experience was almost double my age, or
Might
maybe
be
not
your age.
double, but you get the point. And I was so nervous. I remember we actually, on Fridays, we'd drink a little, have a little, some drinks to give us some liquid courage, not every day, I promise. But, part of, I'm going to think out loud, and I'd love you to just share your thoughts. It's like, you can talk to people, especially in a B2B solution, like maybe people in your organization that like might actually have experience with the technology that could maybe instill a little belief, or you could talk to a happy customer. Like, why do you love the tech? But do you have thoughts on like how you could build a little bit of belief? And maybe this rolls into the theme of empathy too, which I think is important based on what I've seen with your work. So I just love your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, like, since we're talking tech, what a lot of organizations do to enable their teams to be successful, like, let's say, so we take Chris, we're like, okay, Chris, we gotta, Chris has got to be successful selling this product. So what do? We give him a lot of product training, a lot of like, and we think, okay, if Chris knows a lot about this product,
Yeah.
then he'll be able to go out and talk to customers about it and evangelize the benefits and so on. But what happens is we end up creating these reps that are so wrapped around the axle as far as the product goes, is that they don't take a step back and think about, well, what's the problem that, like, why would the customer even give a shit about listening to this? Like, what's the problem that it solves? And so what
Yeah.
happens is, then I go out, I pitch the product, it doesn't land, or the customer gets confused, and then I'm thinking to myself, well, that sucks, but my company's still telling me I got to pitch the product. And now I'm in this vicious cycle where I'm unable to manifest the conviction I need to sell the thing, because I never get into a comfortable motion. My thing to you, and there's a number of things you can do here, but like, think about, like, what would you have conviction around if you had to talk about it? And that's why I love the focus on the problem. If I'm talking about problems and not products, then I can learn about the problem, I can speak the language of the customer, I can go there with high conviction and learn a lot about the problem with the lingo. And that's actually what I realized when I was starting out. I was 25, like starting out in sales, and doing all these demos and so on. I would go into like banks and airlines and and they would make fun of me because the systems that we were going in there to replace were older than I was. So exactly what you said. And so what I what I got really good at was just mastering the problems and the lingo. And I would go
Yeah.
in there and I'd say to customers, you know how it's like the end of your shift and you want to clock out, but then this happens, whenever, like the storytelling. And then people in the room are like smiling and nodding. I'm like, yeah, we know that, like 100%. And so when you get really good at just describing the problem better, even than the customer can themselves, you will naturally manifest this conviction because you'll see it landing. So I say, like, that's one of the things, is like focus on like what's the problem and how to talk about the
Yes.
problem in a very confident way. And you'll be a lot more unstoppable.
It reminds me of a YouTube video of yours I was watching over and over on how to hit the messaging mark, basically. And you had like basically how was the broader circle, and that can be relevant at times, right? Where maybe some context is needed, but you had like a bullseye basically of like, let's see it. So what? Yes. Okay.
This was my first YouTube video I ever made.
Yeah, I was just watching that over and over, and you crushed it.
I know.
It was good.
I still have this flip chart. This is like, and you want to know the fun story, and it's funny as I'm leaning back.
Yeah.
So you see this on the wall behind me?
Yeah.
So that is a piece of this flip chart that I got. Let me just put this back. That I got in 2016 when I was at Salesforce. I was at a conference in New York City, and Simon Sinek, who I'm a big fan of.
Oh yeah.
I'm a big Simon. He was speaking at that conference, and he wrote a book subsequently called The Infinite Game. But at that conference, he was supposed to talk about something, and he said he comes out on stage. There's like 1,000 people. He comes out on stage. He says, "I want to, it's like, do you mind if I try a new talk with you?" And he kind of riffs this talk on the infinite game, and it was so awesome that and he like flow charted some stuff on the stage on this flip chart, and the organizers gave me the flip chart, and I took it to him afterwards, and he signed it.
Oh my gosh!
So that's what that is. And so and what he's talking about on the flip chart is the infinite game. It's like the game that you play just because you love doing it, not because you're trying to win. And I'm like, oh man, that's such a great metaphor for the way I feel about sales. Like the game is always changing. You got to love to play it just because you love to play. So anyways,
amen. You got me fired up, man. And you never even master it, It's like there's always more to learn and discover.
Well, this is also like, it's not just that it's really complex and there's more to learn and discover, but also like it changes. Like selling now is different than selling 2 years ago versus selling pre-pandemic. And what happens is we often fall in love with a certain way of selling, or we sell, we get into bad habits, like in the pandemic where everyone had to go to the cloud. All these cloud companies were selling software hand over fist. And they're like, oh, this is easy. I don't even have to go out and like meet my customers in person. Like I can just sell by remote control. People want to do that. And now all of a sudden, post-pandemic, inflation, recession fears, budgets get cut, selling gets harder. And now we're not even on site with our customers anymore because we didn't have to do that in the pandemic. And we've now lost that muscle memory. So so for a lot of my clients are like, shit, I have to like beg my reps to go back on site with their customers. Meanwhile, when I was at Salesforce and I asked my reps, like, what's the number one piece of advice you would give yourself back on day one of this job, was like, I need to get on site.
Amen. That is so true, man. Seriously. Like I echo that. If you can get on site, like what a differentiator. Like I've won deals and lost deals, and the difference, like I'm not saying for all deals, was that when I won, I was there with the customer, learning about their kids and their family and really building a true personal connection. And when I lost, it's like the competitor was right there and I was remote. So I don't know. I really believe in person so important.
100%. But I give that as an example of like, over the course of even the last 5 years, the thinking and action around getting on site changed. And we didn't realize how important it was until we couldn't do it anymore, and how important, getting back to it was as the economy changed. Like if you're standing still and doing the same thing that you did like 5 years ago in sales, you're losing, right? Sales is a thinking person's profession because the variables are always changing.
Yeah. And so guys, if you want to stay up to date with the sales dance, like, make sure to follow David Priemer on, LinkedIn, on his blog, on YouTube. And we're not done yet, by the way, but I realize I'm trying to manage the time. I know you're a busy guy and we have about like under 6 minutes, like 5 minutes. So there's so many more things I want to ask you, but I wanted to ask you about like actionable habits that are really important to sales success? Because again, when I was looking at your work, it seems like habits are very important,
Mhm.
in terms of what you do. So like, what are, I don't know how many you have, but like, what are some of the top actionable habits that people can implement to reach their goals? And one more thing, I know this is a loaded question, I'm throwing more into it, but I just remember seeing a quote: you don't rise to your goals, but fall to the level of your habits or systems, basically. So
Mhm.
that's why I feel like this is really important.
Yeah. I mean, I think from a habits perspective, like overarch, just be really curious. Be really curious about the pathways and mechanisms by which human beings make purchasing decisions. Don't be what I call an unconscious seller, which is like you just keep doing the same thing over and over again, whether it works or not. If it works, awesome. I want you to dissect it and figure out what the heck you're doing that's so great so you can repeat it. And if it's not working, take a step back and say, like, hey, you know what? This is obviously not what, why do I keep doing this thing? It's funny. I won't name names, but I was doing a session today with a big tech company. And one of the things they were
Oh,
talking to
way
me
to
about,
tease us.
no, they were saying, "Oh yeah, David, how do we get? We're doing prospecting and we're emailing prospects. Like, how do we get them to like respond to us?" And I'm like, "Can you just can you throw into the chat here like an example of an email that you're
Yeah.
using, right?" And it was like a super long, shitty email with very product centric and stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, anyways, we were kind of going through it, and I said, like, what? Why this? Why this? And the rep was like, well, you know, because when we write these emails, we have to, you know, focus on like why us, why now, why this. I'm like, what do you mean like we have to? Like you don't have to do anything. Like you can do whatever you want to get the person to respond. So like, you know, like I get that, you know, there needs to be a certain way of doing things, but big companies are sometimes the worst because they get entrenched in a certain pattern of thinking and behaving, which serves them well and sometimes others not. So I say, like, be, you know, think about sales habits, but like be really curious and don't fall in love with what you're doing. Always be open to the idea of like doing something different. And then, you know, again, if I were to give you like a tactical piece of advice, again, it's like focus on the problem. If you focus on the problem that your customers are trying to solve and get really good at describing that and like having a human conversation around it, they will assume that you have an amazing solution to that problem because you know so much about it, right? So like these are just like simple, you know, and it's funny in our personal lives, you know, if you loved a pair of pants or a camera or something, you know, that you love, you would be able to talk about it with excitement and conviction and, you know, to your friend. But then when you get into sales and someone puts a product in your hand, it's like you have to like unlearn, you know, how to be human. Like we in a way, like we just need to learn how to be human again
Mm.
with whatever product someone puts in our hands. So if you study the way that you just are in your normal everyday life, just be human, be a real person, and you'll find that, you know, your sales execution will take off because, you know, people appreciate authenticity.
Yeah, it sounds like the call to action is to humanize. We hear about personalize, and that's cool too, but like actually humanize and unlearn some of the habits that get in our own way. So I might try and squeeze in one or two more questions, but I saw one nugget that this is more so towards later stages of selling, where it was insightful. It's like people are spending too much time losing deals. You remember that one?
Oh
And just
yeah.
like, yeah, so just I think this is a cool nugget because I've been going through this in my own job. I realized
Mhm.
like, well, you explained the concept basically, but it resonated with me.
Yeah. So I noticed this strange trend in my last couple of VP of sales roles, including Salesforce, which was if I looked at the amount of time we were spending in the discovery phase of sales cycles that we ended up winning versus the amount of discovery time we put into sales cycles that we ended up losing, we were actually spending 3 times longer in the discovery phase of sales cycles that we ended up losing than winning. And this idea, like, think about if I asked you out on a date and you were interested in going out with me, or you asked someone out on a date, then you know that the discovery of like, oh yeah, like let's go out for sure, let's go out, let's go here, let's go there, like it would actually happen relatively quickly. But if you weren't sure if you wanted to go out on a date with me and you were kind of hemming and hawing and like you weren't there when I called you sometimes, like that's what it's like in sales.
I
It's
can't
like
believe this because literally that's been happening in my dating life, man. Some great ladies for sure. And well, I don't know for sure if they are, but very attractive and seem nice, that it prolongs time to date. And you know what? I'm spending too much time losing deals.
Losing deals.
That hit
Yeah.
home with me as a 31-year-old single guy. So anyways, but this happens in business.
It happens in business. So like when you look at the amount of time you're spending in discovery phase of sales cycles, you end up losing. What's happening? Customers are ghosting on you. They, meetings get pushed. They can't get their executives wrangled up to meet with you. They're just not giving you the signals that they're all that into you. And it doesn't mean you're going to lose. But for example, to approach this from a sales leadership perspective, if I know that the average sales cycle length of my deal is like 90 days, okay? And I know that typically those 90-day deals involve 30 days of discovery, let's say, then that's the archetype of a deal that I end up winning. If my team comes to me and I look at their sales pipeline and I say, okay, Chris, you're telling me you have like 4x coverage on the number out next quarter. But when I look at those deals, the average age of those deals is already 90 days or 100 days. So it doesn't look or smell like deals that typically close, on time. And so like I would use that as a discussion point as a sales leader to say, like, I don't believe, based on what good deals look like, that these are good deals. Convince me otherwise. But this idea of sell more by losing faster, if you can jettison the bad fit deals that you're potentially working that are inflating your pipeline. Again, I had data from my teams at Salesforce. Again, like, many reps across, many different cities. I found that for example, my New York City sales reps that had the greatest percentage of fresh pipeline that they were working. So not stale, not deals that were stale and had been there for a long time, fresh pipeline. They had higher levels of quota attainment. Why? Because they just didn't take bullshit from customers. If the customers weren't ready to buy or they didn't see there was a fit, they were a lot more ruthless about cutting them. And I've had reps, one of my clients said, hey, look, David, yeah, I took what you said to heart. I was working 300 opportunities in the next quarter. I ended up cutting them down to like 75 opportunities I thought were actually real.
Beautiful.
And I hit 304% of my quota. Why?
Beautiful.
Because I was just a lot more focused. So I say, like, sell more by losing faster. Shit, I have clients, like even Shopify, they have on their dashboard, they have one of the teams I was working with has a metric called TTL, time to lose. And they actually track how long it takes to lose a deal. Because I don't want to lose deals slow. I want to lose deals fast if I'm going to lose them.
Awesome. This is a great insight, and talk about the ultimate way to close this interview on losing deals faster to close more overall. And man, did that hit home with me as a seller that's 10 years in with a lot to learn. So, hey, we went a little over, but David, thank you so much for your time. I want to encourage the audience to check out Sell the Way You Buy, which is linked in the description of this video, your blog, which is linked in the video, and maybe I'll throw in one of the articles, and to follow you and connect with you on LinkedIn. Any other calls to action and any final words of encouragement to our audience of sellers?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Like if you go to cerebralselling.com, you need to find links to, all the content and the books and the blogs and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, like, it's funny when we first started talking, Chris, on our session today, one of the things you said, sales can be like a gateway to all of the things that you want in life. The only thing that it requires of you is to want to be good. That's the note. And here's the dirty truth is that I come across a lot of people in sales. Not everyone wants to be good. So I'd say if you're listening to this and you want all of the things that sales can provide you in your life, whatever, not just money, whatever, but like fulfillment and growth and engagement, just commit yourself to being good at this. It's a lot of work, but that's why, you get the big bucks to be good at this job, and we don't pay high school students minimum wage to do it. So just commit yourself to wanting to be good.
David Priemer, everyone. Thank you so much, David, for your time. And to the audience, to your success in tech sales and in life, happy selling and happy living. And we'll see you in the next one. Cheers, y'all.